the reasons why there is such enthusiastic
Decades.
support for Trump, because people see this. It means something. Their jobs were gone and now they're coming back and they're able to provide more for their family. They're getting more in their paycheck because it's not being kept by the government. So, we were kind of talking about it earlier, but if we were to really draw out the distinctions, not only in the candidates, but yes, the policy direction that goes with each candidate in this case, but even beyond that, kind of the direction of
the parties.
and the movements in society, because they're maybe loosely tied to the parties, or we definitely are connecting right now at election time, latching on to the political parties. But I think people on both sides would say, hey, yeah, it's not about this party, I'm about this agenda. But at the same time, there are those who are very eager, you'd say those on the left, or those who are very eager to be critical of Trump, his administration, those policies, that direction, and to label that as fascist, to see Trump as the oppressor, and this political side as the one who's trying to take all the freedoms away and all that. When maybe we just take a minute to draw out the real differences in which actually lines up more with the character of fascism or the oppressor.
Sure. Because somebody that's going to vote for Biden because of his policies, I really can't, there's nothing I'm going to be able to say that's going to help you, right? If you're for Biden's policies and Harris's policies, and if you actually genuinely believe that Biden is a moderate after you look at his policies, then you're not going to care what we have to say. But who we're trying to speak to is that crowd that they're turned off by Trump's personality, right? And they've made this a referendum on his personality, and therefore they're going to go vote Biden because they don't like his personality, especially the Christian groups out there.
I'd add even to those that we might speak to in this, those who are even solidly a Trump supporter and a voter, or maybe it's reluctantly in some way, but they lean this direction, but to understand the real threat of the direction, not so much in the candidate of Biden, but those who are using Biden and trying to take things another direction. Because those people need to see it so that they can perhaps be more aroused to fight the fight that we think is necessary. Sure.
So if we looked at the policies that are being presented, and we took the first debate, the second debate, and we also just took it. I know Dustin as well as myself. We watch as much as alternative news and the Democratic candidates giving their speeches as we do Fox News or any right-leaning news outlet. When I pay attention to Biden, the first thing I see in Biden is a chameleon, right? He's going to flip anywhere he needs to flip to be able to rise to the position that he needs to rise to. He has flip-flopped on more policy positions than anybody. And then in Kamala Harris, you have the most left-leaning senator in Congress, the most left-leaning. And may I remind you, there's people such as Bernie Sanders. but she has been deemed the most left-leaning senator in Congress. That ought to make you back up a little bit, right? When Bernie Sanders is saying this is going to be the most progressive agenda we have ever seen, you ought to back up and think, because the whole what happened was Bernie Sanders was leading, and the whole Democratic Party came together to make certain that he did not get the candidacy. And now he's saying, "Oh, no problem. Don't worry about it. They're gonna carry out what I wanted anyway, so I ain't worried about it. Hey, everybody, let's go with Biden because he's basically got my agenda now." Right? And so that ought to make somebody in the Democratic Party go, okay, maybe we tried our best to get Biden in there thinking he was going to be moderate, but he's not. He's going to be dead within a year, and then Harris is going to be the president, and they're going to push forward a Bernie Sanders agenda, which has nothing to do with America and everything to do with socialism, and ultimately socialism has to become communism. And
Well, and add on top of the Bernie agenda, though, is the, all the ultimate corporatism and
sure.
of American corporations, but also the foreign influence of China.
What did Trump? Go ahead. Let's talk about this in the last debate, right? You're going to talk about corporatism, so let's just talk about corporatism. Trump in the last debate, he looked across and he went, "Hey Joe, I don't have friends in Wall Street. You're the one with the friends in Wall Street. You're the one raising funds in Wall Street. I could blow you away if I wanted to, but I don't, because I know I would put myself in a bad situation if I went to these men and asked them for money. It would jeopardize my, or not jeopardize, but maybe jeopardize my ability to make decisions in the future because I had taken money from them." What was he? Go ahead and maybe extrapolate that. Explain that a little bit more, what he was saying there. Because I think that was a good opportunity if we'd had any kind of a moderator to go, "Hey, what's he talk? What's this mean?"
Yeah, get them to explain. Well, I think at least first off, the Democrats position themselves to be the party of the blue collar worker and all that stuff, and the common person, and so they're always critical of the big money of Wall Street and the corporations that are influencing political campaigns, and rightly should. But so the assumption is because Donald Trump is the old rich white guy, from New York, that he must be getting all this money from all these people. When in reality, I mean, and I haven't looked closely at their donations and things like that to confirm it out. But in reality, if you look at the policies in terms of how they affect some of these big corporations. And of course, it has been a big boom during this time, and it has benefited Wall Street in a lot of ways. But in other respects, the deregulation, the other tariffs and trade policies that put pressure on them, trying to pressure them to move back to the United States, it's not very favorable in the eyes of some of the stockholders and the executives and these people at the top who really are just looking at that bottom line, and they themselves perhaps are more profitable when they're located overseas and utilizing cheap or slave labor.
Even Trump had a deal for $100 million he's going to do in China, and he pulled off of it. But when asked about it, he's like, "Yeah, y'all set the system up. It's more profitable for me to go to China to do business." That's the problem. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, business owners are going to go to what is more profitable. Like, let's set the system up to where it's more profitable to be here than to be overseas. That's business.
And there are a lot of things like the tax law, again, something that they're going to point to Trump and say, "Hey, you didn't pay enough taxes. You made all this money, you didn't pay enough taxes." But in reality, even if he avoided some taxes, he did it legally, and it was under a tax system that he didn't set up. These previous politicians.
Let's go to the flat tax, and he can't do that.
Well, and all these particular policies and things like that, they very well may have been shaped by both Democrats and Republicans in previous years, and that just goes back to the conversation that that they've all been susceptible to the corruption and shaping policy, not in our American interest.
It's not a blue-red thing for us.
But in the moment, I mean, even if you look back at Hillary got tons of money from Wall Street. She was the Wall Street candidate. The Democrats have been the Wall Street candidate now for several election cycles, and it's no different under Biden.
Look, you got to understand lobbyists in Congress, right? Lobbyists in Congress are there to put forth regulations which ultimately hinder the small business owner who is trying to compete with the larger business owner, right? And so regulations are good for corporations. They like them because they can afford them, right? They can afford them, and they understand that even though it might cost them money, it doesn't cost them near as much money as a competitor coming up and competing with them. Right, so
that's truly preventative.
That's right.
For the small business.
It's
an annoyance, a hindrance maybe for the big corporation.
But they understand what could happen if it's not there, right? So they're willing to accept it. And so just by Donald Trump tearing down regulation, and it shows you in one sense of how he's for small businesses, and he's not tied to corporations as much so as you have people like the Democratic Party who are all about regulations. But another thing I want to say about taxes. Okay, so the Democrats constantly go, we're going to raise tax on everybody over $400,000. The big dogs are getting off the leash. Like they're getting away with not paying taxes. Let me tell you something. Corporations, they have the money that you don't have, and they know the loopholes that you don't know because their accountants know those loopholes. And if Biden goes in here and taxes people at 70%, guess what? They gonna get out of that loophole too because they know how to do it. Right?
Or they're going to take their business elsewhere again.
Yeah, it's absurd to think that Biden can fool people and Clinton could fool people with, we're going to tax those big corporations and we're going to show them who the boss is. And they're going to go, okay, ma'am, sir, I have billions of dollars and I'll just go somewhere else. And I'll take my millions of jobs with me, right? Or hundreds of thousands of jobs, maybe not millions, hundreds of thousands of jobs with me, right? And it's ludicrous for people to pretend like we don't need corporations. We don't need these people that are wealthy to stay in our country so that they can provide jobs to us so that we ourselves have the opportunity to rise up in the ranks and make a good living. Like the idea that people shouldn't have money at the top is absurd.
Or that they, once you're, really successful and wealthy, that money, the desire for more success and money should no longer be a motivation. I mean, like what's the motive for the small-time worker? Well, it's to make more money and grow his family and his ability to provide. And so it's just scaled up. So you continue to have the same or similar motivations. It's just at a higher level, but you want to see the business that you help grow to this level to keep seeing it grow. You do take pride in employing people. I mean, this is possible anyway, because of course not all corporate executives believe these or care about these kind of things. But it even points back to the bigger issue of our economy over the last several decades and how all of these things together, tax policy, regulations, other things in and around, Wall Street and how they can invest and where they should invest and what the incentives are. But the way the environment's been shaped up and laws have been changed over the last few decades, all of that business has both either shut down or moved overseas. And so our economy has been gutted. So what was once the most powerful economy on earth has been gutted from the inside out. And that is a result of policy and lawmaking decisions. But what I would point to in the context of this larger conversation we're having about people and forces in the world with different agendas than our own good, they have wanted to see the United States hollowed out and undermined in all of our strength, our productive industrial might that created and allowed us to have the strongest military in the world. They wanted to see all that undermined in such a way that we didn't have that strength and power anymore. And, that was basically complete. It would have been nail in the coffin had Hillary been elected and had 8 years under her.
Because what jobs are left if the private sector goes away?
I mean, a bunch of like service jobs or government jobs.
Government jobs, that's right. And so if you pay attention over the last, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, what has been happening is as our jobs have been going overseas, everybody's been moving into the government sector, right? And now there's some statistic out there I saw the other day, like 40 to 50% of the people in America are in some form of government job. Well, think about that. Like, talk about having the ability to get a citizenry to vote for certain things. I mean, you eventually get to a place where you have to vote for these things because you're internally selfish to your paycheck or to, your insurance or certain things, because you're like, man, if I vote for something that leads me to freedom, then I lose my security, right? And so, like you're saying, as they hollow out the private sector and send all those jobs all across the world and don't leave them here, all you have left is the government service jobs to go to.
And so then in
can control people.
within 4 years, you have a dramatic reversal in every way of these kind of policies. Under Trump, you've got a change in regulations, getting all those regulations out of there that are a hindrance to business. You got a change to the tax code. You got tariffs and different trade policies that start bringing jobs back here. So it is a very explicit, intentional reversal. This is what he campaigned on. This is what he's followed through with in the administration. These things and others.
You mean somebody that campaigned on something, they followed through with it?
And that's the
first
reason
time in how many years?
there is such enthusiastic support for Trump, because people see this. It means something. Their jobs were gone and now they're coming back and they're able to provide more for their family. They're getting more in their paycheck because it's not being kept by the government in taxes. And so this, as being an overall net positive and the strength of the country coming back, compare that to the direction things have been going and the direction things would continue. And you think, if you think that it's just now the beginning of some sort of socialist agenda or effort to undermine the country, no, it has been going on for decades. And now we are just simply at this crucial moment of, it's make or break. We either continue to move forward in a new direction with Trump, which is the old direction, or we stay on course to further erode everything that has made this country great.
And if you're wondering what we're talking about, that means you need to tune into our podcast, because that is exactly what we're talking about in cultural Marxism.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do this.